Walter Murch is a living legend to filmmakers, film editors, aspiring film editors, and the following is a conversation I had with him about his new book, Suddenly Something Clicked. It was recorded in 2023 at Camera Image Film Festival in Poland before the book was released. I also interviewed him this year at his house when the book was already published, so make sure to watch this video as well. Enjoy. Good to see you again.
Okay, you too.
Listen, I want to talk about Suddenly Something Clicked,
okay.
your upcoming book.
Yep.
Thanks to you, I had the pleasure of reading 2 chapters, which I both enjoyed a lot. I think it's
good.
It's completely different than like in the blink of an eye, and in a good way. But I guess my first question is like, why this book? Why Suddenly Something Clicked? Why this focus, and what is the focus actually?
So it's Blink of an Eye was written 30 years ago. I was in the middle of my life. Now I'm sort of at the end of it, and I'm looking back and also forward at the same time. It's longer, and it takes in more subjects than Blink. Blink was mainly about film editing. This is about film editing in part, but also about directing and casting and writing and sound and philosophical considerations, aesthetic considerations, and I think some new information that has not been revealed before about cinema, not personalities. This is just kind of the deep the molecular substance of cinema, I guess. There's a chapter on why do movies move. I have a new interpretation of that. So the title is Suddenly Something Clicked, and it comes from an article that Maxim Gorky wrote in 1896. He was a 27-year-old newspaper reporter in Nizhny Novgorod, his hometown, a city that eventually was renamed after him, Gorky, Gorky Park, we all know. But then when the Soviet Union collapsed, it went back to Nizhny Novgorod. Anyway, he was a young reporter. He went to see motion pictures for the first time. The Lumiere brothers came to town, and the only venue that would accept them was the local brothel. And so they cleared out the central salon and hung a bedsheet at one end and the cinematograph at the other. Gorky was in the audience. All of Nizhny was there to see this miracle. The light turned on. He saw a still image of a street scene, and he wrote, "I've seen this before." But then it started to move, and he was instantly depressed, because he fell into what we now would call the uncanny valley. That motion made it lifelike, but there was no color and there was no sound. And it looked to him like a parade of ghosts. And he eloquently described his feelings and described what he was looking at. And then he wrote, "Suddenly something clicked, and the street scene disappeared, and there was suddenly a train rushing at the camera." It's the famous arrival at La Ciotat. And he made the usual jokes about, "Get out of the way, it will come off the screen and crush you." But what he heard was the splice between one shot and another, because in those days, the thickness of the film at a splice was double. And so in the projector, it made a click, clack. And it's the first time in recorded history that anyone, let alone a great writer like Gorky, would comment upon the cut from one shot to another. Later on, his opinion of film changed, and he allowed his novel Mother to be photographed, turned into a film, because of the invention of continuity editing. The fact that you could tell a story by taking fragments of film and putting them together in an interesting way, supercharged motion pictures and turned motion pictures into cinema.
quite a story behind the title.
Yes.
2 days ago, I saw a movie, and the king said, "What a fantastic machine!" It's a I don't know. It came out this year, I think. So it's a documentary about a camera, basically, and what the camera means in our lives today. And when I saw the film, I instantly thought about your book, because you have a title, you have a chapter about the invention of picture, not even moving picture, I guess, right? But just the picture as like the third pillar of what our modern civilization is built upon, kind of, right? Like a steam engine, the first one, right? And then can you talk about that a little bit?
This year, 2023, is the 190th anniversary of motion pictures because of the invention of the praxinoscope. They were drawings, but they moved. And the wonderful thing about the praxinoscope and the zoetrope, which were produced little pieces of art that we would call today GIFs, the GIF. Yeah. They're little cycles of anime, short cycles that have a tiny story to tell, just a gesture. Yeah. But people immediately locked on to the potential of that. And if you look at some of the amazing things that were done in the 1830s, where people completely understood what animation was and how to extract novelty out of that, and interesting transformations. Young women become old women as they move up and through the thing. Rats come out of holes and go off the side of the circle. The interesting thing is that there's nothing in either the zoetrope or the praxinoscope that would have prevented ancient Egyptians from inventing them. All they are a disc of paper, papyrus,
simple machines,
with a drawing and then a little slit of a hole, and you spin it, and there it is. And yet, as far as we know, the Egyptians did not invent motion pictures. Maybe we'll discover a tomb yet unopened, and lo and behold, there is a praxinoscope. It opens up the whole question, rhetorical one, which is, if in a science fiction world, if motion pictures had been invented 100 years earlier, would we have known what to do with them? Because as it is, motion photography was invented in the 1890s, and within 15 years, basically cinema, the way we understand it, had developed, both as an art and a technology and a science and a business. So why did that happen so fast? And my speculation is that the whole of the 19th century was suffused with music and the novel and photography. And music, especially the revelation of Beethoven's music, the revelation of that was the power of dynamics, that Beethoven was not constrained the way previous composers were. He would shrink his music down to a single instrument and then make tiny little steps and then suddenly have an explosion. One of the French critics, listening to one of his early symphonies, said Beethoven puts doves and crocodiles in the same cage, musically speaking. And there's almost no better definition of the cinema than an attempt to find a dove and a crocodile, put them in the same cage and see what happens. So there's dynamics, and then there's realism in the novel, the realistic novel, and obviously photography. And lo and behold, in the 1890s comes an invention that allows these two rivers to flow together. And you have the perfect medium for the dynamic representation of closely observed reality. And it's an explosion, because the culture was primed by 80, 90 years of these two things, and then suddenly found a medium that allowed those two things to exist simultaneously.
Also, yesterday I saw another movie, actually, Dream Scenario, came out this year as well, and it's fascinating to me because, like, it kind of goes back to that idea that we are filmmakers at night, all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We imagine these scenes and so on. We have imaginations of what a film could look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, it's quite complicated to actually do it in a well, in a way that actually works.
Right.
So first of all, like, fascinating to hear that your book will be, will have a broader aspect, a broader.
Yeah, I mean, cinema has been called the seventh art, but it's not. It's a meta art. It is an art of arts. It's an art of arts whose birthday is known to us. All of the other arts have their origins in prehistory, painting, music, drama, whereas almost within a single human lifetime, cinema started to exist. And its power comes from that multifaceted aspect to it, that you can think of the human brain, evolutionarily speaking, as three brains one on top of the other. There's the brain stem, our instinct, the so-called reptilian brain, and then around that is the emotional brain, the so-called mammalian brain, and then around that is the neocortex, the primate, intellectual language brain. But what we know is that each of those brains is capable of apprehending reality directly and, under certain circumstances, taking control. That there are certain desperate situations where your instinct overwhelms your emotions and your intellect. You simply act. And there are other times when your emotions, your sentiment, overwhelms your instincts and your intellect, and then intellect can also rule the roost. And yet film, because of the way it's constructed, can talk directly to instinct because of the power of a sudden cut or a sudden sound. It can obviously talk to emotion. And then it can also talk to the intellect in terms of the coherence of the story. Does that make sense? He wouldn't do that if he did that. He would, little logic loops. And the best films, the most ambitious best films, find a way to take each of those threads and wind them together into a coherent rope that comes to some sort of interesting conclusion.
I immediately think about Godfather.
I mean, it doesn't apply to every film, nor should it. I mean, it would be intolerable if every film was a heavyweight thing. We need minor distractions. We need films that are just pure emotion and don't make a lot of sense just because we want to feel. But when we're talking about what can cinema achieve at the maximum, I think it's something to do with that.
Can you talk about saccadic movements?
Oh, saccadic?
Saccadic?
Yeah, saccadic cinema.
Yeah. Because that's your approach to why do we actually interpret the still pictures as a movement, right? Yeah. Kind of in a way.
It's perhaps more complicated to explain, but there are three outrageous facts about human vision, which is that when you move your eyeballs in your eye sockets, you are blind. The brain takes that information, which may last 3 frames in film terms, and says, get rid of it, because it's just a smear. And it replaces it with a fabrication, kind of like artificial intelligence in a way, and it takes the last image before you moved your eyeball and compares it with the first image after your eyeball comes to rest, and in presto magic, it says, this is probably what was there. And it inserts it into your stream of consciousness just before you come to it, which is the other amazing thing, which is that we are all living in the past. 3 frames approximately. It depends. That when you snap your fingers, you feel the snap, you hear the snap, and you see the snap, but the feeling and the hearing and the touch of that arrive at the brain at different times, because hearing is the quickest, touch is next, and vision is slowest. So they arrive with latency in digital terms, and the thalamus, or some part of the visual process, says these 3 things probably go together, so I'm going to put them in sync, and then I will give them to consciousness. And so all of this is going on under the radar, and you're completely oblivious to all of it, but it's happening. So the theory is that when motion pictures came along, even the little praxinoscope, it was the brain was presented with a still image, interruption, and then another still image, and that was very familiar because that's what happened in a saccade, and it constructs the motion that would presumably link those 2 things together. That's the concept.
I like that there is actually a very easy experiment to check the first fact,
Yes.
right? That you're blind temporarily.
Right. If you walk up to a mirror and stay about this far away from the mirror, look at your left eye, look at your right eye, without moving your head, just move your eyes, you will see no change at all.
No difference at all. And it's spooky.
Somebody here sees your eyes moving, but again, your brain, while the eyes move, have edited that out and replaced it with something else.
Yeah, like optical flow in Premiere or whatever.
It is optical flow, yes. It is like, we have recreated this. What I'm describing is something that is inherent in vertebrate sight. It's not just human beings, it's squirrels, it's birds. Birds are an interesting case because their eyes do not move in their head, but they move their whole head. Over hundreds of millions of years, this software that does this very complicated stuff has been developed, and we benefit from this, because if we didn't have this, every time we moved our eyes, the world would go, it would look like a finger painting that somebody has just smeared. It would be a streak of color and texture.
Or a whip pan in the movie, right? Like
Yeah,
a whip
or
pan,
a swish
but
pan,
very,
yeah.
very,
We don't see swish pans, So it's we benefit from that.
Wonderful. I can't wait to read the whole book. Thank you so much.
All right, you bet.
And that's it. To be honest, I had many more questions, but unfortunately my time with him was limited. If you haven't seen it yet, then watch the first interview that I did with him. Take care. Bye.